Let's go to Albury now and catch up with the Deputy Liberal Leader Sussan Ley. Good to talk to you, Sussan. I want to pick up on a couple of the things I've opened the program with. First up, I want to talk about bushfires. Obviously, you're a country MP. You know these issues well. We have great empathy for what's happening in Los Angeles. It's been a terrible firestorm and they're still battling those fires. The winds could flare them up at any time. But we face similar catastrophes here, don't we? Especially in the populated hills around Melbourne, around the Blue Mountains out of Sydney, in the Adelaide Hills. If we get these conditions here, there are so many houses that are vulnerable. When are we going to see state governments in particular do something about reducing fuel loads and creating safe spaces between bush and housing?
It's a reminder, these LA fires, Chris, that it's not just the bush where I live that can burn, it can be our cities. And while we might not have exactly the same types of wind, the Santa Ana winds that have caused this, we still are vulnerable. And you only have to cast your mind back to the houses and the lives that were lost on Black Saturday. And about 5 years ago near me, in fact, I was in the Upper Murray in my own electorate this morning where we had the Green Valley fire. We tragically lost a life and the community is there and they're actually pretty cranky with not enough mobile phone signal following those disasters. So I'm there working with them and banging the table with our telcos where I need to, because it is so important that when a disaster strikes, you've got connectivity. But you just talk to a country person, you're absolutely right, and they'll tell you exactly what is needed. And often it is backburning at the right time by state governments to remove those fuel loads, which in history and in nature would not often have built up to the levels that they do before a fire.
Yeah, it's absolutely vital. It's the only thing we can control is the fuel and where we put houses. We've got to see a bigger focus on it, or we just continue to see even worse disasters as more and more people move into these areas. I want to get back onto that NBN issue. Seems extraordinary now. The NBN was a Labor plan and they always said it was going to be privatised. It seems that they're only promising not to privatise it now in order to run a scare campaign against the coalition. Are you going to rule out privatising it, go along with the Labor plan?
Anthony Albanese made some announcements this morning or this afternoon. We'll look at them closely. I think their telecommunications policy is just a complete joke, and they put a bill into Parliament about never selling, privatising, whatever. When I talk to people, it's not about the NBN or anything particularly named. It's about my telecommunications services, my ability to live my life, work from home, actually have the connectivity that I deserve at a reasonable price. That's what I hear. So that's the responsibility of the federal government. And we had something in government. We had a mobile broadband, mobile black spot program, various ones that actually delivered that connectivity. And when I look at Labor, I realise that they don't understand what they need to do across this vast landscape. Fires are a good example, but everyone doesn't live on the East Coast. Everyone doesn't live in a major city, and everyone does deserve to have the level of connectivity that we've come to expect in this century we live in with the work that we do.
Now, Peter Dutton opened up the political year, if you like, with the major speech yesterday. I thought it was a really good speech because it told us about his background and his values, and it set out the core criticisms of the Labor government and what you'll focus on. Brilliant that you're talking about the national interest and reducing immigration intake. I think the whole of the country wants to see immigration peeled back or curtailed at the moment. But you're also promising smaller government, and that's something I absolutely applaud. We need smaller government, but it's so hard to deliver, right? You're going to have to go to an election promising to cut government spending. Where are you going to cut, and how are you going to deal with the political difficulty of that?
Well, we know that this government has embarked on a reckless spending program with several off-budget funds, including in my own portfolio space of industry, which is all about their future made in Australia. That's how they describe their industry policy. They've got off-budget funds, the National Reconstruction Fund. I don't think it's spent a single cent on actually helping manufacturers in this country. Meanwhile, their energy policy is hurting them and sending them overseas. And meanwhile, the IMF is saying you create these off-budget funds, they're inflation inflationary. So we know we have to look at those as a first step. But we also have to look at when you spend money as a government, it has to deliver the most efficient and productive return. It's not just about what you spend, it's about how you spend and how you get bang for your buck. But particularly, and we heard Peter focus on this in what I agree was a very well-received speech yesterday. We want the enterprise, the ingenuity, the entrepreneurship of Australians to build businesses in this country that do well and, of course, pay tax and, of course, grow the size of the country as a whole, and migration and skills play their part. But what we've got is this frightened, weak sort of government that doesn't understand the first thing about the competence. That's what surprises me, you know, Chris, the incompetence.
Well, yeah, but they've put an extra 36,000 federal public servants on staff, and half of them in Canberra. I tell you, they're not boosting productivity, helping the nation out there. I can guarantee that. Thanks for joining us, Sussan. We're out of time. I appreciate you joining us.